can use some exotic booze. There's a bar in Far Bombay. Come fly with me, let's fly.
I'm only here for your safety. How many times have I said that? The eye rolls, the non-compliance, the Bose headsets on to avoid me. We were flying from Dallas-Fort Worth to San Juan, Puerto Rico, the day after a hurricane. The conditions were choppy. It was a breakfast flight that actually served meals, so you know that was the good old days. All was well. We seemed to have risen above the clouds, and the worst was over. Well, we thought. I made the appropriate PAs, which no one listened to, and then got out of my jump seat to do my first-class service. I had already taken my breakfast preferences in first class and gotten my 3-tier card out of its compartment. I opened it as a staging area to plate my fake egg omelets and ham made from turkey. The coffee was brewed, and their juice of choice was now in their hands. It was calm, cruising at 34,000 feet, sun shining in the windows, blinding me as I chatted up my passengers. We were all about on our 4th cup of cafe leche. I went back into the galley to remove my fake eggs from the oven and plate them up. It was a messy job because, as usual, the caterer forgot to put the serving utensils on the aircraft. I basically had to use my fingers. You know that is why we are required to wear fingernail polish, so that the passengers can't see the food under our nails. I had taken out numerous meals, and then wham! As I remember, I was suspended between the floor and the ceiling and then thrown to the floor. Beverage cans exploded, and everything not attached or buckled in hit the ceiling and returned. The cart was on top of me, and I was not sure if we were still even in the air. It was very serene, despite the fact that we had dropped 400 feet in 1 second. Everyone was frozen in their positions they landed in, braced for another jolt. Kindly, a passenger got up and got the serving cart off of me. As I looked around, I was shocked at the completely destroyed aircraft appearance. It looked like a hurricane had come through the inside of the plane and left debris in the strangest places. Passengers now were looking at me for reassurance, completely covered in food and drink. Then the call came from the back of the aircraft that the flight attendants had been injured. The flight attendant manning the back of the aircraft had been slung up and hit the curtain rod leading into the galley. Her head was split open, bleeding, and another flight attendant had a broken leg. To add to the confusion, passengers were bleeding, and everyone in the lavatories had broken teeth. I paged for a medical doctor, but all I got was a medical student. At this point, it sounded like a gift from God. The captain called to tell me we were making an emergency landing in Houston in 20 minutes. Busted heads had to be wrapped in blankets. Meal trays were stuffed in seatback pockets. Cuts from flying objects had rattled nerves, had to be addressed. Those passengers not injured were only concerned about their connection they were going to miss in San Juan. I can't explain how I felt when my adrenaline was flowing so hard. I was putting into action everything that I'd prepared for the last 30 years. I could only look at these people in disbelief. The captain had done nothing wrong. We had hit clear air turbulence. I had 7 deaf passengers that were now going to Houston and not to San Juan. I had to explain to them the best way I could. The flight attendant being cared for by the medical student had now gone into shock. I prayed we just got to Houston before she bled to death. We safely landed and taxied to the gate. I was at the front of the aircraft when the door was opened. The official person standing there says, "Was the seatbelt sign on?" I said, I don't know. It happened so fast. I was caring for my passengers and my crew. She asked me again. I shook my head and realized they were only worried about their legal obligations. CNN was there. Medical assistance was there. The plane was taken out of service. 13 passengers went to the hospital while all flight attendants were taken off on backboards out the back galley door so no media could interview them before the company could. We were dispersed into 4 hospitals, trauma division, divide and conquer. No one escorted us. I was sent with no money, no ID, no billfold, no phone, and most of all, no lipstick, which I am required to wear. I was the lucky one, with only severely strained muscles from hitting the aircraft ceiling. The flight attendant in the aft of the aircraft never returned to flying, 247 stitches from ear to ear. My deaf passengers missed the funeral they were going to in San Juan. The captain waited at the airport and caught the first flight back to Miami, where he lived. Before that day, I always thought he was the captain of my ship, but it hurt to learn that he wasn't the idol I always thought he was. My job is to protect the cockpit at any cost. I felt he should have been there for me at my time of need. Thank God for my union, who did call the hospitals to help us. I realized that day that to my company, I was just a number. I was immediately put on workman's comp and had to use up most of my sick time. Even to this day, when I say I am only here for your safety, people look at me and roll their eyes and hide their electronic devices they know that should be turned off. My nail polish and lipstick will always match, and food under my nails will be concealed. But my heart hurts that I wasn't more important to them. I've always loved my job. I guess you could say I was on cloud 9 every time I went to work. But something changed that day. Yes, I love my job, but lack of respect from the company and the general public has erased an element of compassion in me. I don't argue with or try to convince anyone to follow the rules. Now I just explain and move on. There is a lack of connection that used to bond a flight attendant with a passenger. Some days I can't even get them to look up from their video games to give me a beverage order. It was so much fun years back, but things have changed. The flight attendants are rigid, and the passengers are self-indulgent. I wish we all could be a little more polite. I am retiring this year, and this has been such a great part of my life. But it's time now for me to engage in more personal relationships and stop running to catch one more flight.